So we return to Douglas, the Isle of Man. Night has now fully set, but the light from the town and the torches and the walls, the soldiers that have been capturing the town, illuminate the scene. We refocus on the south wall fortification overlooking the port, where around 100 men-at-arms are stationed, donning the white surcoats bearing the red griffin of Ambrose Chevalier. Some with bows overlooking the top of the tower, others standing ready with bastard swords and kite shields. The many dead city guard and a number of dead men-at-arms lie strewn about, mixed together on the walls. No one's had time to deal with them yet. They're pouring into the city streets ahead. Streams and pools of dark blood just faintly illuminated by the torch fire. Elenid, as you are in command of this assault, you know half of your force circled north in the last session to cut off, escape, and pincer the town. By now you would have expected these forces to have arrived and begun their assault. It's only a mile north to the end of town. You have not yet seen any sign of their joining with you. And of your remaining forces, you know a contingent of 50 men were butchered by what sounds like recently turned fledglings to the west. Another 50 went east to follow the wall up north in search of your other half. And you currently have, as I said, about 100 men-at-arms at this southern fortification. And you anticipate Robert to ride back to you, drawing this horde of beasts into a trap. Unfortunately, your pitch and oil has run out, scattered in puddles here and there, just at the edge of the urban environment of the town of Douglas. And Nicholas, as you saw Elenid's men, failed to properly follow her instructions and squandered the pitch. You rapidly considered contingencies at the end of the last session. And with your success, I will give you this. With your knowledge and study of the canine psychology, an idea does come to you. If these are indeed fledglings, they would be driven by the beast just like any other canite, especially now or in any other time. And the beast, you know, reacts to fear, hunger, and anger most easily. Hunger is likely to be their most prominent drive right now. And you do have scores of freshly dead all around you to draw attention. So with one success, that's all I will give you for now. But Elenid and Nicholas, you think you have 10, maybe 15 minutes before Robert will probably be riding back. The scene is yours.
Nicholas is looking around the scene rapidly, apparently processing things with lightning speed as he looks to the battlements, to the ground below, to the walls, to the ways out. But his mind finally focuses on the bodies on the ground. He'll go over to check a few of them to see if they might be still warm.
You check a few of them. The ones nearby are not cold, not as cold as the night air, or even the stone around them, but you know the heat is quickly going out from them. Lukewarm.
They might be... Oh, sorry.
That's it.
They might be fresh enough, he says, to those who would listen.
I certainly hope so.
They
The
would
Northern Regiment has taken much too long.
Then we must assume that they are dead. could set up a distraction. His body should do nicely.
As much as I dislike it, retreat might be the best option.
Your attempt at theatrics has failed. I believe you are correct. It is best if we escape. We must make them as enticing as possible.
Yes, of course, though. What method did you intend to take to do that?
A semblance of life, perhaps. We can prop them up.
Very
It isn't
well.
much to go on. But if these canines are as new as I think they are, they might fall for the ruse. Their beasts will be raging. They won't have time to tell the living from the dead. Nor the presence of mind. How many do we have with us right now?
100 at the fortification, another 50 were just sent east.
Get your men to work. We'll need to lash them to barrels. Stakes if possible.
Of course.
You still don't have it in your mind that you want to fight them, do you?
I know if we continue fighting him with the numbers we have currently, we are going to die, or be taken captive. We are likely more useful to them as captives. Everyone else will die, though. However, I have no intention of either option happening.
We should only need 20 or 30 for this ruse. The rest we can get on their way immediately.
Of course.
Nicholas, do you have your Auspex active right now, or did you turn it off?
Oh no, he has it active. Battlefield is a prime place.
Okay. Make a perception alertness. Difficulty is going to be 9, but if you have your Auspex active, you can decrease it, and this something might be salient to you.
Alright, what's the minimum?
The minimum is 3.
Oh, I can't get that low.
Four successes. Alright, because you are so attuned to the sensation of sound, waiting perhaps for Robert to come, you get something of a very primitive map. You can vaguely detect the sounds that no mortal person could possibly hear, but just beyond in the urban landscape ahead of you of this small town, you can hear the sounds of cries of individual people yelling, as though small conflicts all over town were occurring. Distress.
Mortal distress?
You think so. You vaguely hear something bestial, like roars and hisses and growls mixed with the sounds that you're very familiar. The sound of fear, the sound of people dying.
Getting closer?
No, it's almost like an ambiance in the background. You pick up on it as you find a moment of quiet here. You realize this is starting to pick up out in the middle of the town, kind of all over. In small pieces, here and there.
Damn it, Nicholas says, apparently listening to something far away. The entire township is being overrun. I can hear the sound of the mortals dying.
Then we must make haste.
It could prove a beneficial distraction. But the Covenant is sure not to be delighted with the idea of losing an entire township to these rebels.
Of course they won't be.
Then again, we must consider that logically there's nothing we can do.
She's gonna go round up what men she can. And what did Nicholas want her to do outside of getting them to ready the ships and getting stakes?
He recommended sending several of them away so that they could make ready to escape. Meanwhile, keeping 20 or 30 of them to start lashing these dead men into positions of lifelikeness.
Okay.
It's not going to be an easy thing to do, but he hopes that these Canuts are far enough in their beast that they won't notice till it's too late.
Alright. With the low numbers that they have remaining, she's only going to keep 20 behind and send the rest of the ships if she can come across them.
Absolutely. Just give me a charisma leadership roll, difficulty 5. Did you roll?
That's botch.
Oh no.
Not a botch, but that's a lot of ones.
That is a lot of ones.
Wow. Just kind of floored at how terribly you're doing with these rolls.
Yes, the tactician can't roll tactic rolls to save her life for some reason.
Alright, well, it's not a botch still. You try to organize some of these men to start propping up the dead, sending the men to go prepare the launches and get them ready to return to the ships is, I mean, that's simple enough. The difficult part that you're not seeming to get, well, expressed appropriately to these men is to prop up the dead, to make them appear alive. And so you try and show them and explain and quell their fears about the unchristian act of what they're doing with the dead and why they're doing it. It takes you longer than you mean to, and before you're able to convince anyone, you hear a call from one of the men at the top of the fortification who has been scouting. "Look there! A rider!" And then you hear the galloping of hooves, and cresting the hill, Robert is riding back to you.
We're too late.
Just less than a minute behind him, you see something else begin to crest the hill. A mob.
Fall back!
The men look to you and then look to this mob following the rider. It looks like peasants to begin with, but then you see it is not. It's something else. The speed and primal nature of their movements. They're monsters. Maybe 20 or 25, in the shape of men, chasing after Robert down the hill. Mary in heaven, what devils draw forth from this town?
Flee for your lives, damn fool.
The man trying to prop up one of these dead bodies drops him and drops his sword in the process and just turns to run past. And this is followed by most of the other men turning as well. There's a growing chorus of concern and anxiety, of panic. Robert, you are at the head of this mob, and you see that there is no trap prepared. It looks like all the men are running away.
Takes a moment for Robert to register this. His once determined look just completely lost as he realizes that things have not gone as planned.
Yes, you drew the attention successfully of a couple dozen of these things. It seems like many of them ran off into town in multiple directions. Some of them were eating each other, but at least half started to follow you immediately, and they are close behind. I will need you to make a dexterity ride. Difficulty 7. While you're making that roll, Elena, did you keep the main gate open or closed after you took the fortification?
It was open long enough to get the men in, and promptly closed after.
Alright. And that means no one has taken the time to pull the chains to open the portcullis or open this. Everyone's running to the walls to start climbing down towers, climbing down the ladders. Unfortunately for you, Robert, that means that you have nowhere to ride to except this wall, where you'll have to dismount. Fortunately, your horse rides fast. With 2 successes, you do have a good lead on them, but you know when you get to that wall, you're going to have to dismount very quickly and make your way up to the wall so you can go back down the ladder. What are you doing, Nicholas?
Nicholas is not much of an athlete or a runner, so he will duck into the shadows and hide himself with his prodigious powers of obfuscation.
Okay, easily enough done. You step to the side of the great tower that watches the port, watching this unfold. Elenid, what do? You can see this is happening as well. The gates close, so Robert has nowhere to go. He'll have to stop and dismount, which will cost him precious seconds.
Yes, and if Elena keeps standing where she's standing, she's going to die. So she's headed for the escape.
Alright. So since you are trying to escape, I will just take a Dexterity Athletics standard difficulty to quickly make your way back up the wall, going up these ramparts and staircases over the many piled dead acting as obstacles, and then back down the ladder quickly.
Standard difficulty or heightened?
We'll go difficulty 7 actually. There's quite a few obstacles, and you do this quickly under pressure.
I am burning a willpower.
Okay. Two successes with your willpower. You pull it off. Go ahead and describe Elenid as she makes her way up and then back down on the other side, back to the beach side, the port side.
Elenid, seeing the men running and seeing the horde, knows that if she keeps standing there trying to set up this darn trap, she's not going to make it out. So, and, well, she can't quite use her shadow powers in front of her army, so might as well make a run for it. She turns and runs as quickly as she can. She's not terribly athletic, so it's not nearly as fast as some of the men working for her, but certainly enough to get her over there.
So you begin making your way down the ladder. Maybe not the fastest, but at least you didn't trip on anything. And so you see this, Nicola. You see that all the men have abandoned the interior of the fortification. Elenid herself has made her way up. It's just you there, fortunately hidden much by shadow. And so
He will begin to follow then. Sorry.
Alright, you're starting to follow them?
Yes.
Okay. That's much easier for you to do. You're not in as much a rush. You don't expect these creatures to pay attention to you. Robert, meanwhile, you're able to keep ahead of them for now, but we're gonna see by how much. It is very fortunate that you are on a horse right now, because these gangrel are moving very fast. Even without horses, they're not gaining on you. You do have more and more distance, but they're making good time. I'm effectively counting your 2 successes for running as 4 since you're on a horse. Could easily be more. So you make it to the wall, to the fortification. What does Robert do as he is a couple seconds from stopping?
Robert jump up the wall.
Alright, you're jumping straight from the horse to the wall?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That is going to be quite a feat. So I'm going to make that 2 parts, the balance part and then the leaping part. So to balance off of a moving horse, I'm going to need you to give me a Dexterity Athletics, difficulty 8. Basically stand on a moving horse to prepare to jump. Alright, 3 successes. You are supernaturally graceful, so this goes a lot towards you being able to ride this horse with your feet pressed into the saddle. And just seconds as it's about to reach the gate, you leap up. Give me a strength athletics, difficulty 8. Make it up the wall. Oh no.
Should be difficulty, but yeah, okay.
You rolled 1-9, so you didn't botch. But it's not high enough. You don't make the jump. You balance off your horse, and the strength doesn't come to you. Not enough to jump up to the wall. And so you don't fall, but you land beside your horse, just a couple feet from the closed gate. There are no men here. There's no one here. Elenid is gone. You don't see Nicholas. All you hear are the sound of the starving Gangle, maybe 30 seconds behind you.
Well, failing the jump, he's going to start running up to cross this wall.
Okay. For the Gangle. Okay. Make your dexterity athletics roll. Difficulty for you is going to be even more heightened since they are almost on top of you. I will make it a difficulty 8 to get up to the top very quickly while you can hear the sound of these beasts getting past all the obstacles and all the dead that were starting to be piled up. Okay, 2 successes. You keep your distance, even on foot. You're able to keep that distance. You are fleet of foot, and so you make your way dipping around all of the dead. Go ahead and describe Robert during this time as he makes his way out.
Robert is in a panicked run as he's trying his best to dodge anything that could trip his step as he climbs desperately over this wall.
Alright, you do it. You get to the wall, you get to the ladders that reach the wall, and slide down expertly onto their side. But you know that they did see you. And you think you can even hear their footsteps somewhere on the other side of the wall. As you start to slide down, you hear the roars and the hisses. You hear the sound of flesh being torn apart, actually. But the dead make no sound of distress. On the other side, you see that already ahead of you, many launches have been prepared. Some of them already leaving. Elenid, what did you do when you got down the other side, back to the port side?
She is not leaving in a launch immediately. She is waiting for her compatriots.
Okay, so as you make it to the water, the launches are being filled with the men. You hear calls here and there, yells to hurry up. The men are being organized. They're starting to get out, and you stop. You don't see Nicholas, and at this point, you're just seeing a single figure. You think maybe Robert cresting the wall and making his way down. He's maybe a quarter mile away. What does Nicholas do when he gets off the other side?
He's going to make haste to follow the men to the ships.
Okay. You as well are able to get to the launches. Do you get in one, or do you present yourself to Elenid?
Oh, he'll present himself to Elenid, so that she knows he's here.
Good. Good. Now we only have one missing.
Okay. At this time, you both see that a single figure, which you have to assume is Robert, based on the blonde hair, the distance that you can see, Nicholas. He's starting to make his way down, and just maybe 10 or so seconds later, you can see other figures emerging on the wall from below. They are very behind him, and they're starting to leap over the wall as well. So Robert, you've kept some distance from them, but now you're on foot. So you have about a quarter mile to make to these launches, as who knows how many starving gangrel are chasing after you. Some you think maybe got distracted by the dead, but too many are still following you.
Are there any soldiers in sight?
When you make it to the other side, on the port side by the beach, about a quarter mile out, you can see the port and the docks. You can see the launches. Many of them are already gone. They're already out into the sea, heading south. But you see one launch and two figures, maybe a handful of men, just a few men. It looks like they're waiting.
Alright then, he'll make his way towards those men.
Okay. So you have to clear this distance faster than the gangrel do. Another dexterity athletics, standard difficulty. This is going to be a contest of successes. Give me 5 successes and you make it. Any specialties?
Nope.
Okay, you've got 2 successes. You start to make a good progress. Almost halfway there. But the gangrel are gaining on you. Now they're just a couple seconds behind you. And Elenid and Nicholas, you can see this. Whatever lead Robert had on his horse, it's gone now. His gangrel are moving quickly. There are, at this point, 10 that have still continued to chase. The rest seem to have been stopped by something. Perhaps the dead. But if Robert doesn't hurry, he's going to be caught by them. And even if he makes it, these gangrel will be not very far from you.
We need to get in the boat now.
He's not going to make it.
Yes, and if we go out there and fight, could draw more.
Alright, I'll take another dexterity athletics from you, Robert. You have 3 successes to go. If you lose any more successes to them, they are going to start getting attacks on you to try and tackle you down.
Alright.
Alright, 6 successes. That's much better. They maintain the pace, but you almost triple yours as you start moving much quicker. Being able to hear their footsteps behind you, it's an impetus. You move much more quickly, and you will reach the launch this turn. To describe Robert as he makes it finally to launch.
As they've gotten closer, Robert's sense of impending doom has increased, and he kept up the speed that he was attempting to hide for the sake of the mortals. But he has now gone to more extremes as he attempts to make it onto the ship.
Okay. So you now have about 3 successes of lead on them. But the distance itself is objectively not very far. So Elenid and Nicholas, you see Robert burst speed to you, ignoring the silence of the blood, moving far faster than man should be able to run. And he reaches you.
We're getting in the boat.
Okay. You all pile in and start to shove off, rowing back out to sea. There is a chance that they could make it to the boat before you've really gotten any speed or off the water. Tide pushing you back in. I will take a... I will take a strength athletics from everyone participating in rowing.
Standard?
Yes.
Hey.
Being the last one on, Robert will draw his weapon and seek for any of these fledglings that could jump onto the boat and attempt to run them through.
Okay, so you're preparing defensively. Elenid, are you commanding or rowing?
I'm much better at commanding the men.
Okay. So you direct the men to start rowing quickly, which you think they might have already been very heavily implied to do.
And would you like me to roll for it, or are they terrified enough for it?
They're terrified enough, I think. I will roll for them. Alright. They're going to get 4 successes, and of course there is an upper limit to how fast you can row a boat coming out from tide. They are going to see if they can reach this boat before it gets too far out into the water. So you guys have a collective 4 successes. They'll need to beat that to reach the boat. Actually, I'm going to make it an additional success. They're going to have to get... Yeah, we'll go with 5 successes. Holy shit. Five successes.
Oh my god.
These are very athletic, very hungry, and very desperate gangrel. But I'm not going to say all 10 of them made it. Robert got a good run. It's really just the most athletic coming out here. The ones that make this very fast and athletically impressive leap from the shore just to the edge of your launch 3. The boat shakes, this small launch, just meant for transporting a handful of people, as 3 of these men have latched on to the front of the ship that was at the beach. The men yell out, seeing that some of these things have gotten on, and you can see they just look like, dressed like commoners and peasants, but you can see the blood around their shirts where violence has occurred. Some of these men have ripped up shirts, their faces covered in blood from those they've already slain. Since you were prepared for this, I will give you a free chance to keep them at bay. Give me a dexterity melee.
Standard?
Yes. Every success will get 1 off. 2 successes. So you, Robert, are prepared for this. As you see them leap, you make a flourish with your sword and keep them off. Describe Robert as this is happening.
He very skillfully and with great finesse targets 2 of the gangrel that have made their way onto the ship, successfully fending them off and keeping them from making it further. But it seems that he was not quick enough for the 3rd, as it starts to draw closer.
Yes, you can see the extended claws on this thing. It looks more monster than man. It seems like the men are frightened. The men rowing the boat. They see you at the front. They keep rowing as they see you trying to fight it right now. So it's going to try and get on board to basically grapple you, Robert. But since you're in a better position, then I'm going to give you 1 more action. So basically an initiative where you have first move.
Robert will strike at the beast again.
Alright, and as this is happening, what are Nicholas and Elena doing?
Elened would draw her sword and try to assist.
And Nicholas?
Nicholas, there's only the one, right?
It's just the one that Robert couldn't get off. And it's like I said, it's a narrow boat. There's not a lot of movement or space for movement.
He will try to catch its eyes and dominate it.
Alright, that's going to be very difficult, but not impossible. What do you want to try and dominate it?
He's just going to use Dominate 1, of course, and he's going to tell it to flee.
Okay.
Our sword's strength +2.
Depends on the sword, but that's not uncommon.
Okay.
And it's not going to have a chance to dodge or anything. It's climbing aboard, so you can't miss. So you can roll your damage, and then we'll roll to see if Nicholas can get this thing to flee. Alright, 8 successes on damage. That's good. All this thing can do is soak. Soak 3 of your 8, so that's a very deadly blow. You managed to net 5 lethal as it's trying to climb aboard. Howling and hissing in pain. Alright, Nicholas, as it kind of rears up and finally gets on the edge of the boat, you get a glimpse of its eyes briefly. It's not looking at you, clearly overcome by the beast. Its eyes glowing. You're familiar with the sight of gangrel eyes seeing in the dark. This thing looks truly horrific up front. You may try to command this creature. It will be very difficult. Give me a manipulation, intimidation, difficulty 9. One success. That is all you needed. Go ahead and describe Nicholas during this time.
All right. Nicholas is staying well back away from the thing's claws, seeing that the others appear to have it well in hand. But he is bobbing and weaving, in any case, to try to catch the thing's eyes in a last-ditch effort to get it off the boat. And finally he does, slamming his will into this creature's own. Flee! Go back to your masters.
And just as it finished screeching out, roaring, it looks down at you, hearing your words, past Robert's sword. And it falls overboard, abandoning the ship and falling into the deep and the dark of the water, the ocean.
It will buy us a few moments only.
Robert sheaths his sword, relief washing over his face.
Don't look relieved now. After we get to the ship, we still have to sail off.
My hope is that they will be too disjointed to catch us.
Well, this front failed. Shall we regroup with the other side?
The other side took too long. They are likely dead.
A complete failure, then.
Not complete. We're still alive.
We're still alive and we have 3 hostages. Is not the success that Ambrose wanted, but it's better than a complete failure. But I'd much rather escape and be a disappointment than end up dead or captured.
It might be more of a success than you assume. We know something of their tactics now.
Yes, to go to such lengths.
I would guess that those children were newly embraced. Some sort of mass conversion.
She glances at the mortals on the ship.
The mortals seem terrified. They're rowing but trembling. The one man is shaking in his helmet, which kind of clatters gently against him, looking around to each of you in turn, as though some dawning of knowing too much or having seen more than a man should see has come upon him.
How many men are in the ship?
I'm gonna say 4. You speak of mortals like you ain't one.
No, she wasn't saying mortals. She was looking at them.
So he was looking to Nicholas.
Yeah, Nicholas said it. Then I suggest you row faster.
He gulps. They row in silent otherwise.
Robert has grown silent, a despairing look on his face.
Great. All right.
The group of you will reach your flagship in maybe a couple of minutes now. Most of the launches ahead of you have all reached their ships and are starting to pull up the launches.
Once we get to the ship, we have some memories to erase. That's at least her plan once she gets to the ship.
Nicholas, with your senses, you're the best to see in this darkness, and you can tell that it doesn't appear that these monsters had maybe the mental wherewithal to try and swim after you. If they sank, perhaps they've gotten lost, perhaps they went back. You see a handful of them wandering around on all fours, sniffing around, looking around near the beachhead. They truly look like monsters, like predators, beasts searching for things. Over time, they start to scatter at the beachhead.
Nicholas does keep an eye in that direction, but he does tell the others, I don't think we were followed.
Good. One less issue to deal with.
You hear the growing voices of the crew nearby as you reach your flagship, and hails are made to pull down ropes, attach the launch, and secure your return. And as you reach the boat to return, we will change scenes as this scene fades and cuts to another part of the Isle of Man. Oh, and I will note before I forget that Guy DeFree stayed at your side the entire time, Elenid. Despite being concerned, he stayed with you and was one of the men on the launch. So he has returned as well. Meanwhile, Judith, you, Jack Timbers, and Robert DeFore fended off the northern attack. Most of them are dead. But your forces had a cost as well. While the blades that struck you and pierced your group, the wounds have for the most part healed. Your hunger slaked on the blood of the dead. Some of Ambrose's men-at-arms attacked with torches. About half of the anarchs that fought with you met final death. And of what remains, several still carry burns. I'm going to have you roll me a chance die. If it is below 6, you were burned as well. Alright, no burns for Judith.
Huzzah!
Comrades were not so lucky. Both Jack Timbers and Robert Dufour managed to endure a few burns, even in spite of Jack's brawny, stout self. You can tell that some of those flames pierced even his hardened skin. The group of you, having fended off the northern wall, have returned, heading back in the direction of town. Close to a half dozen of you. And as you all are starting to move as a small group back in the southern direction towards the center of town, a figure emerges from one of the alleys nearby at unnatural speed, moving as a blur until he stops in front of Jack, the light gust following him. Doesn't seem to be one of the fledglings you expected. It was too controlled. And as he stops, you see, does appear like some kind of mercenary or perhaps a brigand. Thin, kind of gaunt appearing, armored in leather. Speaking quickly as he arrives, not wasting any time. "I did as you asked. Riled up the fledglings. Released them on the Covenant when they came by." He looks between Jack and Robert and you. Jagged, toothy grin appears on his face. "Covenant didn't put up much of a fight. Of course, we lost some of them to eating each other. A dozen or so ran into the town. But it worked." Jack smiles approvingly, nodding to you.
Thank you.
Judith is grim-faced. It was a costly victory, and barely that. She tries to force a smile for Jack's benefit. At least we have time enough to flee.
Don't be so dour. Your little spark of an idea won the night. A night we might otherwise would have lost much more.
Aye, but at what cost? And she looks back through the open gate to the south.
They knew what they
Good
signed
king.
up for.
Good Canaanites falling for someone else's cause.
The smile disappears from his face. He looks suddenly angry. They died for their cause.
For their sake, I hope you're right.
And for your sake, I hope it's still your cause as well. There is other news. They were led by the Field Marshal, Ellen Edversinghen. The gauntlet Lord Robert Dufour was seen with them, fleeing. And they both looked to you at that time.
As I said, they were told by the same Tristan, I think you called him, as I was, that an Dentet was.
Mighty convenient timing, isn't it?
I'd say damned inconvenient.
He locks gazes with you for a while before turning back to this scout. Well, this town is gone. It's gonna be crawling with these things. Probably for decades. Until they run out of things to eat.
The town may yet serve a purpose, though.
I turned a few dozen of those things. What's left of the kind here? Little more than meat by morning. And after that, I wouldn't want to be walking down these alleys.
That's rather my point. Perhaps this should be a cautionary tale for those weighing their options and sitting the fence. You see what happens when you choose independence over following the company line. Perhaps we inspire a few more to misbehave.
You have to take all that shit up with Ellen. I just kill things. Speaking of which, we ought to go get her. And the snake. He hefts his axe and starts walking past the scout into the town.
Judith will sheathe her sword and follow.
Robert DeFore is silent, though he does give you a concerned look. The scout and what remains of your force follows after silently. The group of you make your way into town, and the closer you get, the deeper in the streets, the more you hear the sounds of violence, of chaos, men and women and children screaming in the night, the sounds of death. You can't always see it, but you can always hear it. Once in a while, you see someone running away and something else chasing after them in the distance. Jack keeps a hand on his axe, ready, and it seems like the other men as well, waiting for one of these things to jump out. What's going through Judith's mind during this time as you make your way into the center of town?
A touch of regret, but plans are forming in her mind as well. The story of this battle needs to be heard in every Elysium in England. She's pondering how best to do exactly that.
The group of you continue to make your way through town. It seems like you're heading towards this warehouse. With the time you spent here already, you became somewhat familiar with the outline, and so you realize that you must be going back to the place you were told about before. This storage where the kine are kept for feeding. There are several times where you must contend with the stray fledgling, which leaps out from the darkness, or off of a roof, or elsewhere. You can never truly let your guard down. Each one comes at you individually, and they're cut down quickly, but not without some risk. Give me a wits survival, difficulty 6. To avoid an environmental hazard. 3 successes. More than enough. There are times when they jump out at you. You just happen to be the edge of the group, the periphery, and something moves out of the darkness. A man, or was a man. The hair frayed, the eyes glowing, the fangs extended, blood coming down the chin. Were you less aware, you think it might even get a bite to rend your flesh, a claw into your gut, but you're prepared enough to dodge, to parry. None of these creatures manages to get to you before it's cut down. And now, without a great horde, they pose less of a threat individually. So you make your way, you reach the warehouse, and you do have to kill a couple more of these fledglings, these people, before you make it. You pass many dead. The town square is littered with viscera, innards, with heads and limbs. People trying to flee their homes in their nightgowns, what little they could get together. You don't see any survivors. And you enter the warehouse. This is one of the larger buildings in this small but growing port town. The simple wooden structures, maybe 20 feet high, could fit many townhouses within it. And inside, it seems to have a stone block floor, the many aisles of wooden racks, tall shelves reaching the ceiling, filled with crates of supplies, textiles and raw wool, salt and pepper. The many pulleys and rigging systems constructed inside, sets of ladders. The lighting is poor, but for a few lanterns here and there at the entrance of the aisles. Most of the anarchs remaining seem to stand guard as Robert Dufour, Jack Timbers, and you make your way down one of these aisles. A locked hatch is opened, and you go down through a ladder into the sub-basement, where the walls are dirt, occasional roots protruding out. The area further supported with stone and wooden scaffolding that reach the stone block ceiling. The space is only maybe 7 feet high down here. You almost have to duck, given how tall you are, and Jack occasionally does have to duck. This space down here contains maybe a dozen rectangular receptacles, places that the anarchs have slept in the past. Oddly lengthened crates, but made of iron rather than wood. Iron covering set off to the side. The walls are lined with bodies, hanging by their wrists, clapped in iron cuffs, upheld despite being motionless and pale. And down here, the only light in the room is from a single lantern sitting atop an upright barrel. And at the edge of the light, you can see the faint figure of Ellen Alice come forward. She looks to each of you in turn, but her eyes rest on you, Judith. I hear news. Your companions were here.
Can't say as I'm surprised. They met with Tristan same as I.
Of course.
I hadn't expected Ambrose to outfit them quite so heavily.
Didn't you?
For a single outpost on the Isle of Man? No. Fear does strange things to us all, I suppose.
Our losses were considerable, I am to understand as well. And her eyes go to Jack and Robert DeFore, who seem to nod in acknowledgement. This trick played its part. We have survived. But we cannot use this town anymore.
We may not use it as a haven, but it can serve one final purpose.
She waits.
Yet another nail in the coffin of the Covenant. If the story of Ambrose's defeat here were to find its way to the lips of every harpy in England, it would greatly reduce their morale and their standing in the eyes of those without a title.
While I cannot deny its efficacy, I do not wish to propagate a message of utter annihilation.
The victors write the history, isn't that right?
They do, but if the same threat befalls London or York, we will starve before there is any history, or we shall be hunted down. The flames of the Inquisition grow. This is not something we may continue to use.
No, but if a few can stand against so many, and the weight of the Covenant behind them, perhaps that story can inspire others. And kindle a flame where before there was but a spark.
The Covenant, and those loyal to it when they hear of this, will attempt to frame it as a negative outcome for our revolution, of the end of things.
Of course they will. But if a contrary story exists, well, the Covenant is obviously going to attempt to save face at all costs. Anyone released from their sire will know that, all but the daftest of younglings. Whereas we have no reason to lie.
It is regrettable that your silver tongue does not bear the face of Thomas Chamberlain anymore. We would have been benefited from him framing this story. perhaps others may. Perhaps you might direct others to use this to our benefit.
I can certainly try.
After a few moments of silence, another figure becomes apparent from the light that draws close. You see the Easterner Anaf Numtet walking out of the shadows. I must commend you on an unexpected victory. In spite of the losses.
Judith, whose hand had been resting on the pommel of her sword, balls it up a bit and absent-mindedly withdraws that hand from the pommel.
To withdraw the sword or pull your hand away from the sword?
Pull her hand away from it.
In truth, I did not expect any of you suitors to survive. When I heard of the presence of the Gauntlet Lord and the numbers they had.
Ellen is arrogant. She puts far too much faith in her own intellect. She overestimates and then underestimates her opponent.
I would not give her so little credit, or to your idea, which has only been used sparse few times in history.
She's a skilled tactician. I don't mean to undersell her, but even a learned individual has their faults. She struck with the weight of numbers, thinking that it would be to her advantage to simply overwhelm our forces. Ordinarily, she would have been right. But she overestimated the advantage and underestimated the preparations taken during the time they were at anchor.
He nods a couple times, kind of musing, his hand coming up to his chin. You hear some footsteps from behind you, and the lean-looking scout comes back up. I beg your pardon. We were able to capture several of the cogs to the north. They lacked the crew to leave with all of them. He smirks. It seems we have provided for your escape, then. Ellen's gaze turns towards Anaf Numtet expectantly. It seems so. He looks from Ellen back to you as though assessing Judith. What is Judith feeling right now, as far as emotions?
She's weighing options. Obviously, if she attempted to strike Onoftim down now, she wouldn't make it 2 steps towards him. And that wouldn't be a very fitting revenge for Cormac's sake. To say she's conflicted is fair.
You can tell on some level Onoftim is scrutinizing you, although to what level it's unclear. What guarantee at this point do I have that if I do provide you with the last of these secrets, that this one will not slay me where I stand? He kind of gestures to you faintly.
I'd say Jack's axe is a fairly good guarantee. I've seen him. He's faster than I am.
Enough stalling, enough Nantet. You will tell us what you promised. We have sacrificed lives to reach this point. And you can tell at this point that Robert Dufour and Jack Timmers especially are getting antsy, as though ready to actually cut this man down now that push comes to shove. Very well. Decades ago, a deal was struck to provide for my entrance into the Covenant chambers. To sap the trust of the Covenant princes, cripple their faith in each other, and nourish the seeds of war. I was to hear the most powerful princes in Britain, and in exchange, I would aid in the fragmentation of the council, never allowing any alliance or friendship to cement too strongly, sharpen the paranoia, the distrust natural to our kind. The secrets told in those chambers were a handsome payment. But I was offered great resources in addition in my hunt of the Shemsu Heru. This offer came with the support of the Worshipful Company of Mercers, by one whom I was told was named Basileus. He rests his hands together, waiting a moment. Who is this Basileus? I know only pieces. He spoke to me through messengers, except for one meeting held in a ruined tower. And even at this, I did not see his face. It was there. I did meet the rat, which secured my uncanny entrance into the Covenant's private chambers. At that, he looks to you, almost smiling, Judith. Ellen's eyes also turn to you, as though the focus shifts.
The rat. Tristan.
No, Tristan. But you have met this rat. It is none other than the Prince of Norwich, Sebastian.
The one prince the Covenant didn't bother to go and look in on.
I did find that very interesting. As though in some way the prior concealed his notice without concealing his appearance. Without his help, I would never have reached the inner sanctum on my own, despite my many gifts. Sebastian was introduced to me by Basileus. And it was through Basileus I learned that Giovanni hunted a target in parallel to my own. That they both converge at this sepulchre. But by some great misfortune of fate, not one but two gauntlet lords found themselves on the wrong side of that conflict. Fate has a strange sense of humor.
I'm not laughing.
It was never my goal to bring such pain to the Gauntlet Lords, but with things as they were, he lets that hang. What do we see when we focus on Judith? So now Ted explains all this.
She seems to be rolling it around, considering options. momentarily chewing on the corner of her mouth. Do you suppose Sebastian has been facilitating your efforts? Or is he ignorant of them?
Sebastian is quite aware. Basileus introduced me to him at the ruined tower. I wondered for some time how this worshipful company of mercers could do such great things, such aggressive and parasitic things. When Basileus offered me the full backing of the mercers, I deduced how. If he commands such a resource, I know not of a power in this Western world which could compete.
Perhaps the company of the staple, but without leadership for so long, I couldn't say they're up to the task.
One more thing, Snake. Talk about this ruined tower. What if we wanted to go find this Basileus? Drag him out. Use him. Where is it? I know only that it was in the realm known as Norwick, the seat of power for Sebastian. Jack seems to look to Ellen, who is looking down at the ground in thought. I have provided you with very much. I trust our agreement is fulfilled.
And at that question, Judith will look meaningfully at Ellen, as if to say, is it?
She looks up from the ground to meet your eyes. and seems to understand. You have provided much, enough Nantet, but you cost us much as well. You may have a ship to leave. If you may convince me that there would be future value.
Judith's hand snakes around the handle of her sword, but she doesn't draw it yet.
That is not what we agreed. No, but there is value in this moment, in allowing a very important member of this rebellion to have her due, and there is no value in letting you sail away now. His eyes suddenly open wide, and he begins to take a step back, not to run, but certainly like an animal ready to flee.
About how far away from Judith is he?
Not far. Not sword striking distance, but not much farther.
So, like, step and then swipe?
Sure. But you get a look from Ellen to intimate waiting a moment.
And she's just gauging.
If you believed the end of support from my temple came with my sailing away, you are mistaken, my dear. Of course, we would be partners to your evolution in the future. I understand that is how agreements must begin sometimes. With my temple's support, you would gain access to knowledges and histories, to contacts and power of the Levant, of the East. We have secrets of our own we may provide value for, which may benefit you, occult and otherwise.
Judith shifts her stance, as if preparing for something.
Ellen listens to Anophnamtet's words. He has presented the outward appearance of calm confidence. He speaks eloquently of these promises of future support. And as Ellen listens and he finishes, her eyes turn back to you.
Words are wind. What we have need of today, now, are men, fortresses, arms, not promises of more words.
And you can provide all of this, which would outweigh his offer.
No, but I'm also not going to lie and say that I can. Are there chances? Possibly. Anglesey may provide resources that we desperately need. Scotland may yet prove itself a reliable ally. But today, I have nothing. Same as him.
Give me a charisma expression roll, difficulty 6. You have to beat 3 successes here.
I'm going to burn a willpower on this.
Okay. Three successes.
That moment when you wish you had a special...
You're both defending. There's really no defender wins here. So at a tie...
I would say give it to Ellen. See which one she buys.
Given that they're equally potent in their convincing powers, they both weigh on Ellen's mind. Roll 1d10. She listens to you. He has fulfilled what he said he could. He may yet fulfill other things that he says he can. You have your passage in Afnamdet. He closes his eyes and smiles confidently, smugly. Thank you for seeing reason. He looks you in the eyes for a long time before he starts to depart in this dark chamber back to the entrance, passing Robert DeFore, Jack Timbers, who looked ready to act, but step out of the way at Ellen's words. You faintly hear the sound of creaking wood as he makes his way up the ladder, and Ellen's eyes rest on you.
Judith's eyes flick to her. She's obviously nonplussed, but she's holding her tongue.
This revolution needs all value it can possibly attain. And I must be the one to weigh which words and promises may bear fruit, and which sacrifices are worth blood.
Had fewer of our men fallen, the weight of one unlife of value to me might have swayed my sword hand. But it seemed foolish to squander those who fall.
Do not confuse your anger with Ambrose and the elders, which cost our lives today.
Not at all. Enough Nimtet seems, at the moment, an evil to be confronted for another day. And I didn't care to test Jack's reflexes. As I said, I'm quite sure he's faster than I am.
And by this point, you can faintly tell that Robert Dufour and Jack Timbers are also on their way out, leaving just you and Ellen to speak. You showed wisdom and patience in recognizing that there are more important things than even those loved and lost. As difficult as that may have been, it may seem unsatisfying now, but you have at least regained confidence in my mind.
Who am I to judge the value of an unlife? Miss Cormac's loss more sternly felt than the losses of those who fell today. Maybe to me, but to whom were they beloved?
Your insight will serve you well. And she begins to make silent footsteps in your direction and just passes you, her hand resting on your shoulder briefly.
Who will parley with Sebastian?
She stops. Who better than the bridge between this war than you?
Here's hoping he doesn't call for support. The word of the Covenant Prince carries a good deal more weight than mine.
We have time yet to determine how best to use this. For now, let us thank the night that we still have a rebellion to fight. And she continues on.
Judith will be on her heels. Well, flanking. I've been thinking. What about mustering at Lancaster rather than Carlisle?
Why Lancaster?
Within striking distance of Chester, folded into the Pennines, difficult to reach. By the time forces muster there in meaningful number, Covenant forces will have marched past, making for Carlisle. Scots can be ferried with new ships we've acquired, from the north to the beachhead, at Barrow-in-Furness, and then travel on by foot, right to their gates.
We do not yet have the force to strike at Chester. The proximity would do us no great benefit. Carlisle is meant to be the message. The message that princes are not safe in their Elysia. I imagine it will look much like this place after.
I wonder, have you ever attempted to get a message to the lupines in the Pennine?
She actually looks at you in her gate as the two of you are making your way back. She looks at you incredulously. Can you be certain they can read or even speak?
The two that I met, one for certain was a lupine, the other I don't know, spoke adequately. I wouldn't recommend sending a Canite, though. They aren't pleasant to deal with for our kind.
I suspect you would more easily guide fire in a barrel of oil than you would to guide lupines to anything useful.
No, but perhaps they can see reason. We have no need to expand into their territories. So far as I can tell, they're choking under the yoke placed upon them by Ragna. May have an axe to grind.
Of what little I know of the lupines is that there are few wild areas in this world which they have not laid claim to, and civilization has done a marvelous job of expanding. What makes you think that we have not already encroached upon what they consider theirs?
I'm sure that we have. We often cross it in wagon trains and marching through open wilderness. Still, if they could be convinced that we are the lesser of two evils. And she'll kind of just let that thought hang there. Might be worth a messenger.
Assuming they do read, you would need the most tactful of expressions delivered by the most eloquent of speakers. And even then, both the message and the messenger may be destroyed. But if you truly see merit in this, I will not stop you from trying.
I'll put some thought into it. May not be a rapid result.
So long as you do not put yourself at undue risk.
I've trucked quite enough with angry lupines face to face. A man on a horse with a letter seems sufficient for the time being.
She seems to acknowledge that only in silence. There is still much work to do tonight. Come.
And she'll follow.
And the scene will fade on the two of you rejoining the rest of the Anarchs in the upper warehouse. And as that scene fades, we will pause here and take our 15. So we focus again on Robert DeVere, Elenid Versinghen, and Nicholas Ridley, as well as Guy DeFree, aboard one of the handful of cogs on its way back. Now entering February 1456. You set off with 500 men, and barely 100 remain now, a crushing defeat. The Naf Nantet scattered to the winds, and the Anarchs persist. Where do we find Elenid aboard the ship on one of these nights as you are sailing back east?
We have minds to wipe.
You do have a few minds to wipe, perhaps, as there is quite a bit of concern of what they saw when they were out there. Those monsters. The words you spoke. How high is your dominate?
4. To rewrite memories, that's 3. I believe. Let me recheck.
I think you're correct. Forgetful Mind 3. I will take a single roll to cover your efforts. Give me one Wits Subterfuge roll, difficulty 5.
Would you apply the cool-headed specialty for wits?
Not for this.
Okay.
Still, 5 successes, more than you need. You could recreate an entire period of their life with that many successes. Describe to me how these men will now recall the loss of their 400 comrades at the town of Douglas.
Hidden men throughout the town, guerrilla warfare. Unsavory traps laid about.
Alright. These men recall fighting locals native to the island, utilizing urban warfare to their advantage to destructive results. Arrows from nowhere, panic, running. It was terrible. They were unprepared. They don't recall anything about monsters, or anybody talking about mortals. Just that they should have been more prepared for all these ambushes, these traps. But at least they lived. After a few nights of talking to men and reminding them of what actually happened, there's quite a bit more peace. It's still a somber atmosphere being aboard this ship after defeat, but there's less fear.
And she will keep an ear out in case anyone else saw anything they shouldn't have.
Well, there are 4 other ships of roughly 80 men who will recall that some band of savage horde came running down at them like some wild man of legend. They leaped, they jumped. It looked like monsters more than men. But at least they didn't hear any conversation about distinction between mortals and immortals.
Precisely.
Hopefully that will be enough to satisfy the demands of Ambrose to ensure the silence. Difficult as it is when your opponent does not. Where do we find Nicholas when we focus in on the ship one of these nights? Early February.
Nicholas spends a lot of time near the ship's bow, looking out to sea, his hands clenched behind his back, pondering their failures. He's apparently taken it very hard, as any attempts to speak with him are met with stone-faced silence, or perhaps just hearing him argue with himself. Things that might have been.
So Robert, you find that companion Elenid keeps herself busy trying to rewrite memories, and Nicholas seems detached, adrift in his thoughts. What do we see when we turn to Robert on the ship?
He's completely disheartened with this loss. And he'll just mainly keep to himself. He'll keep Guy near him, but for the most part, Guy will be the only company he will keep.
Guy finds you on your top deck by the side of the ship, on the port side. And perhaps he sees the pensive or somber nature in your expression, puts a hand on your shoulder and pats you a couple times. Cheer up, my lord. At the very least, we survived. Live to fight another day, as they say.
For how long?
What mean you by that, my lord?
I fear the wrath of this failure will go much further. We had every advantage, yet we failed miserably.
He looks out to the water off the deck. Oh, how can they blame you for that? They had wild men. I've never seen men like that. It's like they had no fear.
The stock of the men were unusual, yes. But still, they were just very strong men. And men can die.
I'll admit the appearance was disconcerting, but... ah, well. We've been through scrapes in the past. We'll get out of this one.
It is encouraging to see you so uplifted. Prior to the battle, I did not think you had it in you.
I still get these bouts, these episodes. Kind of shakes his head uncertainly. But I'm learning to work through them. I think perhaps they'll never truly go away.
Quite right. What matters is that we still live, regardless of the scars we would bear from the past.
He nods sagely. Then he turns, looks like he's going to go back below deck. Leaving to your thoughts.
Robert won't stop him.
Alright. Your trip back is otherwise uneventful. Give me one moment, I'm just looking at a map. As it stands, unless Elenid changes course, the cogs are due to make port in London in less than a week. It will still be early February by the time you arrive. The air has grown very frigid. The men spend little time above deck when they don't need to. Is there anything else you wish to do or change orders about where the ships go? Eleanor?
No. She may as well face her failure head on.
Alright. And Nicholas, anything else you want to do? Or Robert?
Robert might get a sense of how the men are feeling after that fight. Gauge their emotions.
Give me a perception empathy roll, standard difficulty. One success. Any specialties?
Only truths.
Truths? I'm gonna say no. Overall, one success. You think they're disheartened. It's the expectation, or it's the morale and attitude you'd expect of men after a crushing defeat. Otherwise, nothing pops out. All right.
Well, actually, Robert will he'll try to cheer them up.
Okay. How do you want to go about cheering them up?
Thinking of a proper subject. He'll probably sing a song.
Perfect.
The subject, though, but rather than focusing on the defeats that they live to go back to their families and things that would remind them of their homes. A general song of that nature.
That's a good topic to redirect. Give me a charisma performance, difficulty 5. A song of good cheer is exactly what they need right now. Four successes. Alright. So Ellen and Nicholas, you notice that one of these nights, Robert puts on something of a performance for the men aboard and sings an inspiring and uplifting song, refocusing their attention on the life yet to live and their wives and their sons and daughters at home that still get to see them, to focus on the positives that still remain. And it comes across very successfully. You see smiles on some of these men you haven't seen in many nights, really since you left. Some of them clap along to the tune. Overall, you feel like you've made a very big difference on the morale of these soldiers.
It is enough even to snap Nicholas out of his reverie, at least for a night. He will come and join the other men and listen to this song, not knowing that Robert was so talented. Perhaps writing him off is just another fop. Until now.
Sorry.
That's it.
Okay. Elned as well will listen. At least there could be one night of merriment before whatever consequences may befall her once they reach London. But she does intend to speak with them on another night. The other kindred on the ship, I mean.
Alright. So for at least one night, Robert, you've brought good cheer to the crew, to the ship. And even after that, you notice that there's less gloom. There is still an air of seriousness. You were defeated quite severely after all. But at least these men have known some peace. They're sleeping more. They're sleeping more fitfully and without as much grimace, without as much anxiety. And it's maybe a night or two later that you are bidden to speak with Elned. Elned, where do you draw this meeting at?
What rooms are available on the ship for this?
It's not a very big ship you've found. The cog is... let's see here. Maybe 60, 70 feet long. Below deck is mostly used for cots and storage. The best privacy you could hope for is probably at the front or the bow of the ship where these small towers are constructed. You could at least see people
Then she
approaching.
will go for one of those areas.
Alright, the bow is larger.
Then the bow.
Alright. Nicholas, Robert, you make your way up to the bow of the ship to find Elned waiting there already. Guy stops just short of the bow, waiting at the ladder as though as a guard. The three of you are together on this night.
Her arms are folded in front of her as she looks them approach. Once we get to the city, once we have to tell this story, make no mistake, it is my failure, and it will be presented as such. Whatever weight the Covenant wishes to throw will be thrown at me, not you.
Why is it you would take sole responsibility for this?
It is my plan that failed. Perhaps if I went the day before, like you suggested, things would have turned out differently.
Doesn't sit right. We all went through the plan. We all do have equal standing.
I am the tactician, am I not? I am the one who makes the plans and orders the men.
what you say is true.
It will get both of you out of harm's way at the very least.
And what if we don't want to be out of harm's way?
Then that is your own prerogative.
Whatever punishment comes down, I suspect it would be lessened if it fell upon 3 rather than 1.
Agreed.
You do realize this is Ambrose they're going to be talking to, correct?
Why, yes. And I've seen him execute. Well. Again, if we can lessen the blow in any way, this is something we should consider.
If you wish to, I will not stop you. However, you have no need to. It is not your failure.
This failure will mark the gauntlet, whether we like it to or not.
What remains of it, at least.
And do you suppose that Ambrose has never failed so spectacularly in all his centuries of unlife?
I believe that is the image he would like to portray. Do I believe it personally? No. I believe he has failed a great many times. It is just not talked about.
He would not go so far as to execute us all for this. We are bringing him valuable reconnaissance.
At the cost of about 400 men.
There are many casualties in war. We cannot cry over them all.
This is not crying over it. With these numbers, we should have won.
Two mortal men, yes. But when you throw in the unknown variables, as we've had to deal with, things can change rapidly. Perhaps better decisions could have been made. But the end result is, when they know of an assault, we know what lengths they would go to win.
And I believe there are 3 guards that we have captured as well, though of what use and information they may provide is something entirely different.
And I suggest we pry open their minds. Anything to present to Ambrose would be most useful.
Of course.
I can assist you with this.
If you would like, I am skilled enough in the ways to do so as well.
Let us see what can be gleaned from these guards.
Alright, what do you wish to try to do to your captive city guard? Town guard. Nicholas, are you going to try something?
Yes, it was my understanding they were going to try to glean what they might have known. Their inhuman residents. These are immortal men, right?
Yeah, they're mortals. They're just town guards.
No, they probably don't know much of anything. Regardless, he will take one of them and attempt to plumb his mind.
Alright, using Auspex?
Yes. Specifically to find out if they were expected, first of all.
Alright, is that based on willpower?
What a fantastic question.
I don't have it in front of me.
I'm flipping to it right.
I believe it's the same roll that Robert makes. Invade the mind.
Oh, yes. Willpower is the difficulty, I believe.
Alright, your difficulty here is going to be 3. I want to say it's intelligence subterfuge, but it doesn't sound right.
I keep flipping right by it. There we go. Or invade the mind. Here we go. Intelligence subterfuge. Difficulty
3, yep. Six successes. You have full access to this man's memory and could even rewrite large portions of his memory if you wished. You said you wished to know if they were expected, the kind expected in an attack?
Yes. And if there's any strange things that happened in the weeks coming up to the attack.
They did not expect any attack. You remember, you look through the memories and you remember feeling the surprise when one day all these ships showed up at the south and then the north. There was a lot of alarm in the town that day. You remember telling your wife to hide your newborn son in the floorboards if anything should happen. You remember other strange things. You try and focus on that sensation of curiosity and uncertainty, confusion. A few things stick out. When you focus on that emotion, you see images. You're walking through the main fortification in the south. You recall it from when you were there, except in this memory there's of course no blood or bodies, and as you pass by a hallway you catch a glance. You think you got walking into a hallway you weren't supposed to. There's a slender woman long black hair, speaking to what looks like a Moor. It's an odd sight for these two to be in fortifications like this and to be speaking in hushed tones. The woman says something to you, and you don't really remember what she said, but you immediately started walking away. And you're glad for it. And as you start to walk away, you almost walk into someone else, another strange sight. A woman. A woman looks very strong, brawny perhaps, tall and fair. And she's walking with the confidence as if she's expecting to meet someone up here. And you recognize the face that you saw at the meeting with Tristan. It's Judith. You're sure of it.
Does the guard see anything else relating to Judith? He's actually going to try to plumb deeper.
No, he excuses himself as he makes a very direct and compulsory march downward, down the stairs that he was just coming out of. He apologizes quickly after glancing at Judith and continues on his way. It's a brief interaction.
He'll scan relatively quickly for anything else of note that this guard has seen. Anything that's stuck with him anyway towards the surface.
You think? Nothing else of very great note. The thing that stuck out the most was the sight of these ships and the impending doom. The fear he had of his wife and child left somewhere behind as he was taken prisoner. He thinks of them often and wonders if this invading force brought them on another ship. Or what else befell them?
Just for a moment, one fleeting moment, Nicholas almost remembers what it was like to be mortal. What it was like to feel such care for the others who you loved. And then he sets it aside as foolish frippery and pulls himself out of this man's mind.
He's simply kneeling there, his hands behind his back, clasped in iron, looking down at the floorboards. A dejected and sullen expression, grim.
He considers for a moment interfering further in this man's miserable life, but he decides it's not worth it. Let him think when his child lives or dies, it doesn't matter. Are the others here with him?
Elena is questioning one of the others.
Robert's not.
He'll wait for Elenid then. He doesn't want to interrupt her. He'll watch her work. It's interesting to him.
Alright, Elenid, what do you do?
She will attempt to make eye contact with him.
One of the other men.
One of the other men, yes.
Mm-hmm. He's slow to meet your gaze, but he does.
What ships have been coming to the island before the attack? And I'm attempting to find out what level of Dominate I would have to use for that.
Just one or two. I think one would probably suffice if you just ask, if you add tell me in front of that.
Yeah.
If you demand that he tells you this information, that would just be manipulation, intimidation, difficulty 3. Alright, 3 successes, firmly implanted as a command. And to clarify, your question was, what other ships came to the island before your fleet did?
Yes.
I saw a few fishing vessels approach. They made port for a couple days. Couple traders made port. They weren't here very long.
Tell me if any of them have a schedule with coming to the island multiple times.
One of them comes about every 3 months. A trading ship. Regularly comes out of London, straight to the Isle. Don't know where after that.
Describe the ship to me.
He describes to you a cog not unlike the one you're on, but slightly smaller. It bears a flag of a merchant of no great significance.
I will make sure to make detail of the exact flag.
Okay. Consider it had. Make a note. Anything else?
No.
Alright. As you release your gaze on him, he goes back to looking away, trying to avoid any more gazes if he can.
She walks over to Nicholas. Well, you heard what I found out. What did you find?
Nicholas looks at the bound guards as if to ask, is this the right place to discuss this? He doesn't say anything, though. Not yet.
Then let us go elsewhere.
I'll step out into the hall then.
she will follow.
Alright. We'll say that there are enough men above deck right now that, at least briefly, you have the below deck, mostly private, and stepped out into an area of cots and such.
One thing is for certain, they were not expecting an attack.
I definitely should have launched the attack the night earlier.
I think for the briefest moment I caught sight of some of them, but there is a disturbing complication.
Which is?
Your companion, Judith, was among them, and not as a prisoner.
Wasn't she ordered to go there as a double agent? Or something along those lines. I thought she was to gain information from them and get back to the prince.
Would I know if what I saw in his mind would correspond at any point to the time of the attack? Can I connect that based on his fear and his memory?
Yes, you recall that memory being in very close proximity to the fear you recall in seeing all those ships. Maybe the night before, the evening before? Possibly two. It's not an exact science.
It is my belief she would have been there when we made landfall.
Perhaps she was elsewhere. Not. We do not know if she did battle with our forces or not. But
Do you trust her?
It also cannot be ruled out.
Do you trust her?
She has always been a bit of a wild card. But trust I am cautious with.
That is a wise assertion. Still, we must not discount the possibility she was involved somehow.
Of course.
Other than that, there was not much to glean from him. Just the simple concerns of mortal men.
That is fair. But at least we likely found the source of their food. From Ambrose's own city, no less.
That will not sit well with him, I think.
I know it will not. But it is something, at the very least.
And there is nothing for us to do but wait until we arrive in London.
Precisely. Unless the third knows something more, but I highly doubt that.
It is taxing to look so deeply into another's mind. Perhaps another night.
Perhaps. I know once the men are handed over, well, the 3 hostages, they will be interrogated thoroughly by his own men.
At which point they will pass from our tale into memory.
Precisely.
Very well. I shall go back to the bow to absorb some more of the fine sea air. I have much to consider.
Of course.
And with that, he will head back above decks.
All right. Do either of you share what you have with Robert?
Nicholas is actually assuming that Eleanor will.
If she can find Robert.
It's not a big boat.
How to say? Shouldn't be too hard.
So yes, you'll find him.
Okay.
Alright, so you can consider to have known what they have discovered, Robert. If there's nothing else.
And in case Ambrose kills her out of anger, she does go into exacting detail of what she can remember of that flag.
Alright. Your trip back to London is otherwise uneventful.
Excellent, then back to London it is.
So one of these evenings in early February, you are greeted by the familiar sound of the slow rocking of the ship by the docks moored, the faint ambiance, the white noise of the bustle of the boardwalk, a busy port. Even as the sun is set, you know that only a port as busy as London would have this much commotion at it. And upon making yourself known to the top deck, you are greeted by the daunting impression of the many tall buildings facing down and out toward the port, the dozens of other ships lined up on either side of you, The men going here and there, offloading crates, more calls. The occasional carriage goes by down the boardwalk. The three of you are top deck. Guide of Free not far behind. Where to now, my lords?
Well, we have a meeting to arrange, and, well, 3 prisoners to escort.
He nods and goes back below deck, perhaps to see about that. Soon enough, you have your prisoners mobile, and your men-at-arms, of what left of them remain, are at your command. It's a simple affair of marching these prisoners where you would like. You bring them straight to St. Mary's Undercroft.
The prisoners, yes. The men, she's not going to take the men there.
All right. So are you going to take any of your men to help escort these 3 prisoners?
Only to make sure they don't run off.
Okay.
But once we get to
Alright, they will escort the men to the Undercroft. Just a handful. And
once we get close enough, I imagine enough of Ambrose's forces would be readily available to do the switch off.
it's kind of more of the same. The ones you meet will probably just be cleaner and have more energy than the ones with you.
Mm-hmm.
You recognize the same banner, the same surcoat that these men have been wearing. And Guy DeFree will be following you, Robert DeVere. Are you going with them all down to the Undercroft as well?
Yep.
And Nicholas?
Yes.
Okay. One moment. I organize stuff. Okay. So you march these men down the Undercroft, where you find more of Ambrose's men ready and waiting. They assist with the escort. When you reach the court of London in the Undercroft, you only find that it seems Mordecai, the Seneschal, and Cash Solus, the sheriff, are present, and they seem to be speaking down the aisle of what might be the pews, or rather the nave, of this Undercroft, speaking quietly. And Cash notices you quickly, and the conversation ends. They both turn to appraise the large group of you.
My apologies, I did not mean to disturb.
I see you've returned. What is this? And he gestures out to the prisoners escorted.
Prisoners of war, captives. Guards from the city, though. I believe we've gotten all the information we need from them.
He narrows his eyes and exchanges glances with Cash Solus. I was expecting a different kind of prisoner.
I know you were.
Please elaborate.
May we speak more privately? And she glances over at the mortals. It's not a matter she wishes to discuss in front of them.
He nods, and Cash seems to take the hint, walking towards the group of guards and directing them away to bring the prisoners away, leaving just the four of you with Mordecai.
It seemed to go well enough at first, but upon getting into the city, there were bands of blood-crazed fledglings. It seems that the rebels have a tactic of turning a good portion of the town in order to drive us out. The exact nature of the gifts they displayed were, well, turning their fingers into claws and, of course, heightened strength, but with enough use of the blood, most of us can do that.
So what you are saying is you were repelled, defeated.
Yes, the northern forces just simply never came. I'm uncertain what they faced up there, but whatever it was, they did not survive.
And they turned the town into fledglings.
Not the entire town, no. But a sizable number.
What is that, 5, 10?
50.
His eyebrows raised briefly.
Human forces cannot deal with that. I naturally have had to alter the memories of some of them to keep them from recalling certain things. Furthermore, from the hostages, we have gained certain information.
His hand goes up to his forehead to squeeze, his eyes close, looking vexed. What a disaster. Ambrose will not be pleased.
I am aware he will not. According to one of the prisoners, there is a trading vessel that comes once every 3 months from a lesser merchant, and here's the kicker to it. It is sailing directly from London to supply them.
Supply them what?
They say it is a trading vessel, but if it's coming every 3 months, I suspect that's how the rebels were getting their food. Other than that, the prisoners mentioned the occasional fishing boat, but they do not have a set schedule like the trading vessel does.
No. He kind of puts his hand up and kind of waves you off. I forgot that Judith is not representative. Most women know nothing of trading. A ship that comes every 3 months is not unusual, my dear. Fairly standard, in fact. It is likely this ship has some kind of route. London is just one stop. Unless you know the contents of the cargo are other than goods. This sounds quite mundane.
I know the flag, at the very least.
If you say that 50 Canaanites were turned in a town as small as Douglas, I would say that there is no longer a town known as Douglas to sail to. Am I right?
On that matter, you are correct, sir.
Yes, I imagine the human population must be eradicated by now.
That number of Canaanites would stress even London. So they scuttled the town. He kind of looks down in thought. Well, they care more about victory than what they get out of victory, it seems. I hope when you tell Ambrose all this that you can frame that in a positive light. Because I certainly will not be telling him.
Of course.
We had hoped and expected that your once companion would have delivered this victory for us. Was there any sight of her?
We did not personally see her, no.
Yet we have proof that she was there.
Is that so?
I looked into the mind of one of the men who we captured. He saw her, along with a few others who I assume were Canaanites. It was only a brief glance before he was dominated to leave.
Well, that is an interesting thing to note, isn't it? Tell me, my dear, my lord. He looks to you, Robert. Do you think Judith is still behaving? And mind you, Ambrose will ask you the same, but in far more direct terms.
We have made no contact. It is impossible to make a decisive decision. But that she did not meet us. Perhaps that could speak of its own.
Word of advice, I would distance yourself. Things will not go well for her if she returns to this Undercroft to answer to Ambrose, or anyone that aligns with her.
So noted.
Unless she can personally deliver some of the Anarch leaders. He just kind of shakes his head, looking off to the side. What, may I ask, were our losses?
Robert will look to Helen.
Most of the force, unfortunately. There is about 100 left.
Only 100 of my men remain. The voice of Ambrose emanates from the doorway behind you.
That is correct.
He's silent for a few moments before taking steps toward the group of you. Mordecai lowers his head to avert his eyes. And what did the other 400 accomplish? It sounds as though nothing.
Not nothing. There were losses on their side as well. However, I did not stick around to tally the bodies.
How many Anarchs did you slay? Clearly you do not have enough Nemtet's fangs or head to bring me.
No, I did not see the Easterner, unfortunately.
From side, we did not see enough Nimtet, only a force of fledglings. Perhaps 50 in number. It is safe to assume that they focus all of their attention on the other force.
You have squandered my men. Enough Nemtet is free. The Anarchs, for all we know, remain at large. And you bring me this. He gestures behind him. Paltry group of peasants. And your companion, it seems and sounds, has again betrayed us.
That remains to be seen. We have not had contact, perhaps. Judith has managed to bear fruit.
His eyes flared dangerously. It is yet to be seen. What is to be seen is that you are all useless! And his hand flies to the side, crushing some of the pews, sending it flying into the marble columns. Dust and splinters go everywhere. What good is a marshal with squandering such forces? What use have I for you? His fangs are bared.
Nicholas's hands remain clenched behind his back, but he takes a step back from this display.
Robert lowers his head at this.
Alnad fully expected such a reaction and attempts to keep her calm.
His eyes pierce you, Elenid. Speak!
It was a failure, yes. I did not account for them turning a large number of the town like that.
And you are a fool, and your failure embarrasses the Covenant. They could be anywhere. Enough Nemtet is half across the world by now.
There are a precious few rays of hope. But with these men we've brought, perhaps more could be discovered from them. As well as seeking their ties, they had a supplier somehow, some way.
Ambrose grips at the pew to his left, his hand crushing the wood beneath. You will go. All of you. You will go out and find something worthy to redeem this debacle, this failure. Or you will bring me Judith herself to answer for this personally.
It is as you say, my prince. And Robert will bow deeply before turning to leave.
All right. As he stands in the entrance, you pass by him. You cannot feel heat off of him as all of you are undead, but you do feel a palpable aura of something menacing, unholy power and anger. What does Nicholas do?
Nicholas is battling his own demons right now. He doesn't much care that Ambrose is angry with them. He'll give him a bow before passing by as well.
Eloned will curtsy and make her way to exit after her compatriots have.
Alright, you start to pass by him. And as you pass by, with speed unperceptible to you, a grip of a hand reaches your shoulder to stop you. Not to harm you, but far stronger than any man could possess. A grip you do not expect to get out of. And his head almost swivels to you, looking down. Fail me again, like this, and you will be replaced.
Understood.
He waits a beat before letting go.
And she will walk out of there.
All right. You depart, the three of you. The scene will fade on that. Meanwhile, returning to Judith, you are back at the town of Douglas, though not for very long, as the town is quickly overrun by the fledglings who consume really all the kind. And rather than try and deal with it, the Anarch leadership decides to take forces and spare them the danger. The ships to the north are taken, and you begin setting sail. Sailing north for now. What are Judith's immediate and perhaps more mid to long-term plans at this point with what has transpired?
She really is taking in what she knows and going back over previous interactions with both the Covenant princes and now Eleanor as well. She's sort of putting together a pattern of behaviors, especially when it comes to conflict. It does occur to her that if they mean to lay siege to a city like Carlisle, there are certain things that are vulnerable targets that could be struck before an army musters. She's going to seek out the other anarchs and propose early plans.
Said propose early plans?
Plans with a P.
Alright.
And then also try and figure out, since they're heading north, whether or not she was expected to go meet with Sebastian before the thaw, or...
On the ship ride north, you get the impression from speaking with Ellen that they're still determining what the best course to take with this information, as they will only have one chance at using it before it becomes known. And that kind of leverage could be powerful. It seems right now they're sailing north with the anticipation of laying low until Carlisle, to be close to the Scots.
Do I get any kind of sense as far as a timetable until Carlisle? Because February, almost spring.
Yes, you get the impression that the actual assault on Carlisle will probably be around July.
Then she is going to suggest sending in a small force, a very small force, maybe only two individuals, to spoil the grain stores. Fighting men can't fight if they can't be fed, and there won't be suitable harvests until August, the earliest. Whatever scouring they can do of the countryside may not suffice to sustain a force of any meaningful number.
Your idea is well received. Robert Dufour seems inclined to participate in this. The scout you met before probably will also join him unless you insist on participating.
Unless she's asked to join, doesn't see the point. It's honestly could be handled by ghouls if they had the resources, but
although you do end up meeting with other anarchs, you think they really don't have the resources.
during this interaction, a thought occurs to Judith. Why, precisely, are we waiting until July?
It's explained to you that the Scottish force, while at the heart will be led and maneuvered by Cainites, is leading a group which you've heard of before, the Border Reavers, which is entirely human. And having them assault during the winter will sound suicidal to them. Whereas an assault taking place at night in the summer with the proper preparations made sounds a lot more like a successful sacking of an otherwise somewhat remote city.
True. But if they have no food stores and no able-bodied men being fed, they won't be able to put up a fight. It's far better to take a town whole and intact, with its defenses laid low, than to raze it to the ground. I, for one, would rather not sacrifice any more men if we can avoid it.
You can try to convince Ellen of this. I'll let you choose manipulation or charisma expression. Difficulty 8.
Can I use academics instead?
Explain.
So, drawing on the little bit of tactical history that she's been educated on, she's drawing on the expected practices in battle. What served them well so far is doing what's not expected. Well, when you're expected to attack a place, you do so during the time when it's expected to wage war, which in this case is summer. And you do so under accepted terms of combat, which is in a field with armed men. If we attack instead their morale on their food stores, academic.
Let's see.
In the end, I'll take what you give me, but
Yeah, I still feel like this is more expression than academics. I feel like academics is what allows you to kind of make that point, but it comes
Okay.
down to,
fair enough. I'll take it.
yeah.
At some point, I'm going to kind of demand leadership, but for now, I don't feel like I've... Standard diff?
8. Difficulty 8.
Whew.
To change the entire battle plan of Carlisle.
I didn't mean it, Bukar. You know?
0 successes. Ellen hears your words, but remains convinced that grain stores or not, they'll lose more men trying to take these border reavers during the winter than if they use them in a surprise nighttime raid during the summer.
If we attack when they are ready, we will lose a third of our forces.
She invites you to, or rather, not invites you to, but agrees with the idea to poison or drain or deplete their grain stores to weaken the men, to deplete them before the battle, just that it happened during summer when what little force they do have is actually effective. You get the impression that she does want to turn Carlisle into a similar scene as Douglas, except that instead of killing Ambrose's men-at-arms, she wants to hold up the head of the Prince of Carlisle and destroy his court. A more potent message to the Undead Society.
A head is worthless. A hostage, however. It doesn't simply show strength of military might, but demonstrates benevolence, wins others to our cause, weakens the morale. If all anyone can expect is final death, what reason have they to surrender?
She turns to you looking very confident, even zealous. Because they will know that they need not fight to protect their elders, that they may join us, and join in the heart's blood, as we will. We will feast upon the heart's blood of the Carlisle Prince. Those neonates who fill his court need not perish if they join us. And that is the message that the Covenant neonates will hear. That they need not die for their princes.
At present, the threat of an angry prince is far more prescient than the threat of a far-off anarch band. It will take many cities and many needlessly felled neonates before the threat we carry outweighs the threat that they carry.
It will seem less far away after one court has been felled, and the story may spread. If this may happen in Carlisle, where else may it happen? You have shown us the power of spreading news, of spreading story. Done it yourself, in fact. We will continue to harness that power. Carlisle will be our torch in the night.
When we make land, I will compel someone to carry news of Douglas directly to Bella Matea and erase his memory of us entirely after the story has been told.
She nods approvingly. And your lupine plan?
As you say, the message must be carefully tailored, and the messenger carefully chosen. I'm working on the former. The latter will take more time. For now, though, I would choose to be present at Carlisle.
You will go there now.
I thought Defour and the messenger were going.
They are. She's asking if you're going.
I meant for the battle.
There's
In
a
my
coast.
head, she was telling me, sorry.
Oh, that's fine. She continues after a moment. There's a coast known as Solway to the west of Carlisle. It is where the Irish Sea meets the land. A cottage on this coast is visible from the water. Return there at the beginning of July.
As you say. In that case, I will see what forces I can find in Anglesey. They may not be ready in time for Carlisle, but perhaps at the next.
She nods, smiling gently, and departs at that. As it is early February, you have approximately 5 months. 5 months of plotting, perhaps. And at that, we will end the scene and end the session since it's about 9 o'clock. And we'll pick it up next game.
Cool.
Okay.
Thoughts, comments, reactions?
Holy shit.
I feel like an asshole for not offing an off Nentet when the opportunity presented itself. I really wanted.
You were in a rock and a hard place. I mean, I can think of some kind of far-fetched ways you could have done it, but it all would have been really risky, and you probably would have died.
Yeah.
Even if you had gotten your duel, it still would have been risky.
Yeah. Even if Jack hadn't knocked me on my ass and taken my head, as a matter of course, I still would have actually had to do the deal.
Yeah, Nottingham-Tet's no Slim Jim. Good game all around. We'll do one experience and entertaining role players, starting with Judith.
Maybe not immediately apparent to everyone, but what stood out to me was Robert on the ship after the fact. He's kind of seeing, it seems like to me, that status and position isn't necessarily a shield. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're not incorrect there.
Insightful. Robert, how about you?
Judith for playing this angle of fully supporting the Anarchs, it seems.
Angle. Yeah. That's the ticket.
Great. Ellen.
I'm going to give it to Nicholas for not giving a fuck when there was a nearly frenzying Ambrose right in front of
Keeping his cool. Emotion is for the weak. Death is everything. Nicholas, what about?
I'm going to give it to Elenid for grace in the face of utter defeat.
Fair. All right, sweet. Great game. Glad to be back into it after a hiatus, so we'll pick it up again hopefully next week.